13 amazing artifacts unearthed by accident. Not all incredible discoveries are made by trained scientists or adventurers like Indiana Jones. In fact, a lot of the most important archaeological discoveries are made completely by accident. Number 13. Hairpin of Catherine de' Medici. As the Queen of France from 1547 to 1559 and regent for 3 of her sons, Catherine was no stranger to the finer things in life. She had a large collection of jewelry, most of which has been stolen or lost. In 2012, archaeologists were excavating and preparing Fontainebleau Palace for an upcoming restoration project when they came across an incredibly interesting find. Catherine's hairpin, immediately recognizable by the intertwined C's, had been tossed into a communal toilet. A thorough, very thorough cleaning of the object revealed that it was painted in her signature colors, green and white. The mystery of the object is in where it was found. How did it end up in a communal toilet? As queen, she would have had her own facilities, so what was she doing there? A more plausible explanation is not that it was lost by the queen herself, but that a lady-in-waiting might have stolen it and then tried to get rid of the evidence. Number 12. Banwell Cave. In 1757, an adjacent cave filled with stalactites was found and was going to be opened to the public in order to raise money for a nearby school. In an attempt to find an easier entrance, the Banwell Bone Cave was discovered by accident. The cave, when it was discovered, was covered in the bones of prehistoric animals. In fact, the pile of bones on the floor was about 3 feet deep. In the following years, the owner had the bones assembled along the walls, much in the fashion of the French catacombs. The man who had originally discovered the bones believed they may have been the remains of the animals who were trapped in the flood of Noah's Ark, but there's no evidence to support that. Today, the cave is open to visitors and under near constant archaeological study. Number 11. Ship found at the World Trade Center. In 2010, New York construction workers were attempting to excavate, clear, and rebuild on the site of the World Trade Centers. During their efforts, they came across an amazing discovery. Buried beneath the soil was the remnants of a ship dating back to the antebellum period. The ship was crafted from lumber cut in 1773. The oaks used to build this ship were from the same area as the white oak used to construct Independence Hall, where the Constitution was signed. The ship has been identified as a Hudson River sloop and was probably buried here when it was no longer able to be used as a cargo ship. Many other artifacts were found at the site, including musket balls, French cannonballs, buttons, and more. Number 10. Mud Dragon. In an attempt to clear bedrock for a construction project, a team of Chinese construction workers nearly blew up a new species of bird-like dinosaur with dynamite. Luckily, incredibly, the dynamite merely uncovered the 72-million-year-old skeleton instead of blowing it to pieces. Although it suffered some damage, the skeleton was mostly intact and very well preserved by the mud surrounding it. The dinosaur was a large bird found encased in mud, its head upright and wings outstretched as if it were still trying to get free. It was about the size of a sheep, but belonged to a family of feathered dinosaurs, suggesting it too would have been covered in feathers and probably flightless. Number 9. King Richard III. In 2012, an historian named Philippa Langley was convinced she had found the final resting place of King Richard III when she had goosebumps walking through a small parking lot. You heard right, it was a hunch. She had very little evidence, she just knew. She insisted archaeologists dig up a parking lot in the hopes that she had guessed right on the location of the Greyfriars Church in Leicester. When they broke through the pavement, they found a skeleton with scoliosis who was later DNA tested. The DNA revealed the remains were, in fact, of the long-lost king. Richard III was reburied with honor, complete with a ceremony during which a distant cousin, Benedict Cumberbatch, read a poem dedicated to his life. Number 8. Mayan Mural. When Luis Ramirez decided to do some renovations in his kitchen, he stumbled across something amazing. His home is at least 300 years old, and during the 18th century, it probably belonged to someone of very high status. Since its construction, the walls have been replastered again and again. So when Ramirez started chipping away at the layers of plaster, he finally found the original wall of his home, and underneath 3 centuries of paint and plaster, he found an ancient Mayan mural. The mural depicts a procession of men in a mix of Spanish and Mayan clothing, suggesting the mural is probably depicting the conquest dance, which is a representation of the Spanish conquest and conversion to Christianity. Not many murals of this kind still exist, so the Ramirez find is extremely rare. Number 7. Hoxton Hoard. Attempting to find the lost hammer of a neighboring farmer, Eric Laws was out and about wielding a metal detector. When it started beeping, he dug into the soil and didn't find his friend's hammer, but he did find a large hoard of Roman treasure. He reported it immediately so its historical significance could be preserved, and the study began. The Hoxton Hoard included jewelry and coins made with enough gold and silver to be worth $4.3 million today. There were countless pieces of jewelry, including a body chain and bangle dedicated to Julianne, supposedly the jewelry's owner, as well as more than 15,000 coins dating to 8 Roman emperors. The hoard was found far from any known Roman settlement, suggesting the family had buried it there to find later during the end of Roman occupation in Britain. These were turbulent times and dangerous for Roman settlers, so the family was likely fleeing the country. The treasure suggests the family did come back and retrieve at least some of it, but left a lot of the hoard buried. Number 6. Gladiator School. It might seem odd that a gladiator school, or ludus, was found just outside of Vienna, but it's also important to realize that the city of Carnuntum would not have been far away. Carnuntum was located on the Danube and was the capital of Upper Pannonia. In fact, the famous Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius resided here for 3 years. The ludus would have kept 80 gladiators outside of the city and trained them for their bloody battles. It is the first school to have been found outside of Rome and would have nearly rivaled the most famous Ludus Magnus, which trained gladiators to fight in the Colosseum. Archaeologists were using a radar system to map the nearby town of Carnuntum when their machinery started showing some other interesting buildings, with plumbing and heated floors and a smallish gladiator ring. Archaeologists knew they'd found something incredible. They mapped the complex, which would have been about 20,000 square feet in total. Carnuntum would have been home to 50,000 people at its height, and the school is dated to be 1,800 years old. Number 5. Derinkuyu City. Cappadocia, a region in Turkey, is dotted with immense structures called fairy chimneys. They are made of a rock soft enough to carve, and people have been carving living spaces into them for thousands of years. There are a number of known underground cities in Cappadocia, but the one located underneath Derinkuyu is among the most impressive. In 1963, a man was doing renovations on his home when he tore down a wall that led to a room connected to a long passageway. That passageway was one of thousands in the Derinkuyu underground city. It is incredibly elaborate with 11 stories, 15,000 airshafts, and enough room to house 20,000 people. The city features wine cellars, homes, stables, livestock pens, freshwater wells, and more. Even more impressive is the fact that they had an incredible defense system, being able to shut large stone doors to steal the city from the outside, and then seal each level off from one another in times of invasion. There have been absolutely no cave-ins in the city, and it is still safe enough to house the archaeologists who are studying it. The mystery behind this find is no one knows who built it. Number 4. Lascaux Caves. The story behind one of the most significant archaeological finds in history goes like this. In southwest France in the year 1940, 4 teenagers and a dog named Robot were out for a walk when Robot decided to chase a rabbit into a hole in the ground. The boys chased after their dog, thinking he had found a tunnel to buried treasure, which was somewhere around this area, according to a local story. They found they were surrounded by vivid paintings of animals and decided to make some money by showing it to their friends if they bought a ticket. News travels fast, and soon archaeologists were on the scene. They determined the paintings were authentic examples of cave art from the Paleolithic period, about 17,000 years old. The cave has over 600 paintings and 1,500 engravings, nearly all of them of extinct species of fauna and flora. Today, the cave is closed to visitors who have inadvertently caused the deterioration of the paint, literally just by breathing around them. Number 3. World War II Bomb. In 2013, construction workers in Belgrade were in for a surprise when they went to work at 11 p.m. in the city center. While working on Budimska Street in downtown Belgrade, workers unearthed an amazingly unexploded bomb that had been buried 20 feet below the streets since 1941. It weighed over 1 ton and contained 1,300 pounds of explosives. The bomb was safely excavated after the area was evacuated and was taken to a military base where it was destroyed safely on February 5, 2016. Number 2. Roman Villa. A man living in Wiltshire, England, was attempting to run electricity to a building in his backyard so his children could use it as a recreation room when the electricians running the cable declared they had found something. They had unearthed an elaborate mosaic tile, which turned out to be the bottom floor of an ancient Roman villa, built around 175 AD. The villa was incredibly well preserved and so intricate it may have been the home of a Roman emperor. It's believed the villa was once 3 stories high. Among the finds here were oyster shells, suggesting they were specifically cultivated cultivated for the family, elite pottery, and the coffin of a Roman person, which was being used as a flower bed. The find is one of the most important of its kind in years, because the site has not been touched for nearly 1,500 years, allowing scientists and archaeologists to study how the wealthiest 1% of Roman society lived in incredible detail. Number 1. Venus de Milo. You've almost certainly heard of and seen photos of this famous Greek statue, but what you might not have known is that she was discovered completely by accident. In 1820, a peasant by the name of Yorgos Kontrotas came across a cave covered in a slab of marble while he was searching for building blocks. Some people are up in arms over who actually made the discovery, with some crediting Yorgos Patonis and his son Antonio. Whoever found it certainly was not looking for it. The Venus de Milo has become one of the most iconic classical works of art, probably because very little is known about her. She is called Venus, but she very well may be a depiction of Aphrodite. She may not even be a goddess at all, but the lover of the sculptor, or someone else entirely. Her lack of arms has transformed her into a surrealist piece and left many questioning how her arms were broken off, but the rest of her remained undamaged.